Alright. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting in-depth review. Today, I'm going to be doing an in-depth review of the new Daggerheart expansion, Hope and Fear. Quick reminder, if you do enjoy this stuff, please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon to turn notifications on. All those things are super, super important. So, let's talk about this. A little over a year ago now, Critical Role rocked the world with the release of Daggerheart. A phenomenally well-designed, interesting, rules-light fantasy TTRPG. It delighted people. It got a lot of conversations started. It got a lot of people angry for a bunch of different reasons. But overall, people have been loving it. One of the issues some people had with it was there was so little of Daggerheart that existed. The original core book didn't have like an introductory adventure or anything like that. It had some campaign frames, but even those required the GM to put a decent amount of work in order to turn them into something. It had monsters in there, but there wasn't a ton of them. Just everything about it just seemed like there wasn't enough. And there was no announcements of anything after Daggerheart got published. People kept wondering, okay, well, where's the next thing? Where's our first campaign? You know, where's our first rules expansion? Where's everything? And people are freaking out. So, fast forward a little bit, we eventually got the announcement of the first major expansion called Daggerheart, Hope and Fear. And throughout the press tour of Daggerheart, Hope and Fear, all the way up to now, we have learned that originally Hope and Fear was not the next thing planned. Originally, they had other things that they were thinking about publishing first, like adventures and stuff like that. And then when they realized people just wanted more Daggerheart, they kind of shifted priorities and made Hope and Fear the next big thing that was coming out. Since the kind of soft launch of like the PDFs and everything for pre-orders and stuff like that, there have been a bunch of other announcements. We're going to be getting, I'm trying to remember, I think it's 2 books a year for the next 3 years, a bunch of adventures and other stuff like that. Like, there's lots of stuff planned for Daggerheart now, but when Daggerheart first launched, I don't think anyone at Critical Role at Darrington Press, I don't think anyone expected Daggerheart to become the force of nature that it is. Fast forwarding to Hope and Fear. Hope and Fear is interesting, to say the least. I had a very, very different kind of opinion of what I thought Daggerheart, Hope and Fear was going to be compared to what it actually is, and I have to say I was pleasantly surprised. Not that I was negatively looking at it, like I was looking forward to it, but what I was expecting was so much less than what we actually get with it. So let's actually go into more specifics. Now, this in-depth review is going to be exactly that, in-depth. I'm going to talk about the things that I like, the things that I don't like, the things I think they did well, the things I think they need to do better. And I'm going to go chapter by chapter, sometimes page by page, and that takes a long time. And not everybody wants to sit through like an hour and a half, 2 hour long review just to figure out if they want to pick something up. So I always start off these in-depth reviews with a section that I like to call Should You Buy This? And I separate potential buyers into 3 different groups. The first group is a group that I call players. Players are people that are going to be sitting down at a table and primarily, not exclusively, but primarily going to be playing a single player character, and they're going to be interacting with the other players and listening to the GM as the GM spouts their nonsense, as they are apt to do. The second group is a group that I call GMs, or Game Masters. Game Masters are people that are going to be sitting down at a table and primarily, not exclusively, but primarily running the game. They're going to be designing encounters, creating NPCs, all of that fun stuff. Obviously, they have different wants and needs than players do. The third group is a group that's pretty often overlooked. They're a group that I like to call the Lorehounds. Lorehounds may never actually sit down at a table, but they're really interested in the world that the game comes from. The lore, the history, all of that flavor text that's built into it, that's the stuff that Lorehounds love. And obviously, they have much different needs than both players and GMs. So, should you buy this? Well, let's find out. The first group. Should players buy this book? So, as I mentioned before, I've been following this book for a while. I pre-ordered it as soon as it was available to pre-order from Critical Role. As soon as it was able to be pre-ordered on Demiplane, I got the Demiplane version as well. I really, really like the Demiplane character sheets and everything. And as soon as they get the campaign part of Demiplane completed, it will have everything that I need to be able to run my favorite TTRPGs, because I'll be able to do encounter building and all that other stuff that's really, really useful for me. I love my Demiplane. So, I was anticipating when I first pre-ordered this. I was anticipating, obviously, there's 4 new classes, and then the new ancestries, communities, transformations. All of those had shown up in the Void, the playtest for Daggerheart. And so I was just like, oh, cool, we'll have the final versions of that. And then some new campaign frames. And I was like, that'll be fine. Maybe they'll put some new monsters into. That'll be cool, and I'll be very excited. There is so much more to this book than just that. And for players specifically, obviously, the 4 new classes open up a world of new options for you. The 4 new classes are Assassin, Brawler, Warlock, and Witch. And the Brawler was the biggest mistake that they made in the core book, which was not having a monk in there. Every TTRPG needs a monk. I don't care what the setting is. If I can't win by punching things in the face, your TTRPG is a failure. That's just how it works. I don't make the rules that I made up. Let me try that again. I don't make the rules. I just make them up. They have corrected that mistake by adding the Brawler in here. The Assassin is kind of your more traditional rogue type thing. The Warlock is a caster with some issues. I'll go into more of it. Not issues with the class. I mean, the character itself has issues. They don't just have issues. They have full subscriptions. I'll go more into that in the in-depth portion of this. And then the Witch is very much kind of a Fae-ish themed caster. It's not exactly what I was expecting from a class called the Witch, but it does fit and it's very interesting. The ancestries themselves are very, very cool. The communities are very, very cool. The transformations are an amazing kind of additional level of customization you can add to your characters. All of that is very, very useful for players. But the thing that really surprised me, because I don't remember any of this showing up in The Void, was Chapter 2, Equipment and Loot. Specifically, they introduce a bunch of new primary and secondary weapons. And the one that I've been waiting for finally shows up, which is Brass Knuckles. In the base game, you technically could create a punchy punch character. There's a two-handed weapon called Arcane Gauntlets. They're a strength-based magic weapon. So if you wanted to create a punching-based character, you could do that with the Arcane Gauntlets. But it required a spellcasting character, so I think Fighters, is that the class that could... There was at least one class that didn't have spellcasting as part of it, so they couldn't use the Arcane Gauntlets, because you have to be able to cast spells to use a magic weapon. And the Arcane Gauntlets, I wasn't particularly fond of them. I wanted to be able to make my punchy punch. In the equipment and loot section, they introduce Brass Knuckles, which now they're a one-handed weapon. So you now can have Brass Knuckles, and then they also have a They also have an offhand version of them where it's just offhand breasts, knuckles. And so it allows you to actually create a monk with any of the classes. And then they have other really interesting things like the whip sword, which is effectively a a primary weapon whip, because they do have a whip, but it's a secondary weapon. So if I wanted to live my Castlevania fantasy, I couldn't really do that. Now they have the whip sword, and it effectively works the same way. The thing about weapons in Daggerheart is they're basically just damage dice with fancy effects every so often. Like, they're not full-on weapons. They don't have history or lore behind them. They're just mechanical things. So you could definitely reskin anything you wanted into brass knuckles if you wanted to. It isn't that big a deal. But it's nice that they have them in here. They also added a rope dart. If you're not familiar with that, it's a kung fu weapon that is amazingly cool to watch someone else that knows, or technically to just watch someone else using it. If they know what they're doing, it is just, it looks like it defies physics. Jackie Chan, in a couple of his movies, creates kind of makeshift rope darts, like in Shanghai Noon. He takes a horseshoe and ties it to just a rope and uses that as a rope dart. It's very, very cool. If you don't know what you're doing with it, it's a fantastic way to hurt yourself and create bruises and spots you didn't think you could get bruises in, like most flexible weapons. With the secondary weapons, they also added they have throwing knives, so you can make a ranged-based throwing character, which I really, really like. I can make my Gambit character. And if I remember correctly, they also had, I wanted to say they had something like javelins, but they have, javelin. It's a tier 2 weapon. But they have a feature called stockpiled, which basically means you have enough that you don't have to keep track of your ammo for it. You can just keep using them as a ranged weapon. So I like that. So yeah, going back to players and should you buy this? Yes, if you want to play one of the new classes, the final version of them, because the Void versions are earlier versions that I think everybody but the Assassin has had at least minor changes made to the Hope and Fear version. You're going to want to get this for that, or the new Ancestries, the new communities or transformations. Like, all that stuff is cool. But also the equipment and loot is really, really awesome. And can definitely help you make even more amazing, fun, unique characters. So, yeah. So as far as, do I recommend this for players? I have to look up the thing. So I have to have prices. So I'm going to the US Critrol shop. So, if you want to pick up the physical version of Daggerheart Hope and Fear, of which I do have it right here. So, my physical version came in early. It came in weeks ago, to be perfectly honest. And it's gorgeous. It really, really is. It's got lots of cool stuff in it. Like, this is the book. And it's a very pretty book. And these are the cards. And so I have the cards, and I've got, I can't see what's on the camera because I have the camera hidden right now behind other windows. So these are the cards, and it's got little scratch pads for, what are those? I think those are monster scratch cards, yeah. So yeah, it's amazing and fun. I will have it sitting on my shelf very soon after I do this whole thing. So yeah, anyway, if you want to pick up the physical version, it's $40 in the US. I don't know where it is everywhere else. And it also comes, I believe it comes with a PDF for free. At least the pre-order does. If you want just the PDF, you can get it through Drive-Thru RPG for $20. So it's basically half the price if you just want the PDF version, and then if I go to the Daggerheart Nexus, let me see, Hope and Fear. Come on, there we go. I just need to see an amount. There we go. And if you want the demi-plane version of it, which comes with the character creator and all the cool stuff built into the demi-plane, including their reader, which is pretty good. I still tend to prefer a PDF because it's easier for me to kind of navigate, and it gives me page numbers and stuff like that. The demi-plane version of it is the $30. So, do I recommend this for players? Even the most expensive option, which is the physical version directly from Critical Role, I highly recommend it. There is so much good stuff here. It definitely expands on Daggerheart, and the new stuff in here just feels better. Like, they've had a year to kind of figure out how Daggerheart works now. And they've gotten lots of, or over a year actually, and they've gotten lots of feedback from the fans and everything like that. So they're really kind of coming into their own as far as kind of understanding how the game works and how to design for it. And so this is a really, really good thing for it. And then obviously, if $40 is worth it, $20 for just the PDF is definitely worth it. I do tend to recommend the demi-plane version of it for $30, just because, again, the demi-plane version is really, really really easy to use. The character builder built into into Demiplane is one of the best character builders that exists on the internet, and that goes for just about everything that they put on Demiplane. They make really, really good character builders that are very easy to follow and very easy to build, and it integrates directly with Roll20. So if you're running games online, your character sheet on Demiplane, you can use literally that character sheet in your Roll to 20 games, and it makes things work exceptionally well. I literally have run Daggerheart in Roll to 20 using those character sheets last year when it first came out, and it worked perfectly. So yeah. So, recommendation for players, definitely purchase it if you like Daggerheart. This is just more of the stuff that makes Daggerheart awesome. Moving on. The second group. Should GMs buy this book? So, obviously, if your players want to use the player options, you're going to want to at least have access to the book so that you know what player options they're going to have. Nothing is more annoying than, running the game and the players going, oh, I'm going to use this ability. And you go, what? You go, yeah, it's this ability. It's a new ability. And you have no idea what it is. And either you have to sit there and read it and try and glean exactly what it's designed to do right there in front of them, or you just have to kind of take their word that they're interpreting it the correct way. And that just slows the game down and causes this issue. So obviously, that will be useful. That being said, there's also some other really, really awesome stuff that's geared more towards GMs. The first kind of big thing, transformations in and of themselves. Yes, it's technically a quote-unquote character option, but the transformations are not something that is technically available to the players, as default. Transformations are designed for the GM to allow for kind of different character types, and they also allow you to impose consequences for different things. Like there's a ghost transformation, and so effectively what that could be is a player dies, but they don't want to give up their character. Well, you could use the ghost transformation as a way for them to continue playing that character while having an actual consequence to the fact that they died. The one one of the ones that's gotten a little bit more feedback on it, the vampire. again, this is something that could have a very interesting narrative effect. If your players are fighting against vampires and one of them actually gets bit, you could use the vampire transformation as a way to have consequence to that vampire fight. Same thing is true about the werewolf transformation. Both of those are rather well-designed methods of creating consequences that in something like D&D, they have lycanthropy in D&D. It's a curse. It's really, really minor, and it really doesn't do anything. I homebrewed my own version of getting rid of lycanthropy because of how lame it is. And in most TTRPGs, if you're dealing with lycanthropes or vampires, you know, those things that traditionally in folklore have the ability to kind of infect and transform people, it's normally treated as something kind of minor, or it's the entire point of the game if you're looking at something like Vampire the Masquerade or Werewolf the Apocalypse. Here, there are actual mechanical benefits and drawbacks to becoming a vampire. There are actual mechanical benefits and drawbacks to becoming a werewolf. And it makes for very interesting, unique stories that you can tell that you really can't tell in any other TTRPG that I am aware of in the same way. So the transformation system is not just, you know, cool new tools for the players. It's actually tools for the GM that will allow consequences to happen. And have mechanical results from those consequences. In addition, there's a bunch of new adversaries, and the new adversaries, they've mentioned before, the adversaries in the core book work. It's not that they're bad, they're just not particularly well designed. Because they're brand new to this, they're still learning how things work. The new adversaries are significantly more interesting, and they actually have two new features. One of the features is called Pool. There will be certain monsters that will have like traits that have the pool tag next to them. And what that means is either before or after the fight, everybody that survives the fight gets to have a pool party. And if you bring $25, you also get to have a pizza party. So it becomes a pizza pool party. No. What it is they will have something that they do that will contribute tokens to this pool, and then other monsters that are part of that kind of subtype will be able to use those tokens to do other things. The first one I was able to find was actually a tier 2 creature called Guahalan Fanglord, which, as far as I can tell, they are... Well, here, a shape-shifting warlord who leads a group of warriors into battle. So kind of like druid-like characters. But they have a feature called Pack Alpha, passive pool. And when they make it a successful attack, you add a token to the Guahalan pool. And when a Guahalan ally within close range makes an attack, you can spend a token from the pool to give that advantage on the roll. So you can see this pool system... in addition to being a lot of fun for players that want a little Caribbean feel, I'm never going to stop making jokes about pool being a pool party. It adds another way for monsters to be able to kind of interact with each other, and I think that is really cool. The other thing that they add, which I think is becoming almost kind of standard in most TTRPGs now, is what they call evolution. Evolution is basically something happens to the monster, and you get the "this isn't even my final form." Mwahahaha. I really like evolution systems. They added it in the Theros book for D&D 5th edition. I just like the idea of monsters being able to have like multiple forms, or being able to evolve into a more powerful form mid-fight or something like that, because it allows you to challenge the players in ways that you normally can't. What I mean by that is basically with an evolution, the players are fighting. Normally these are going to be like big boss monster type things. As the players are fighting this thing, they're like, well, this is the boss monster. Let's do everything we can. And they'll get it down to whatever its evolution point is. Then it evolves. It generally means that it gets all its hit points back. It gets all its stress back. And basically the fight starts over, and they have already spent a lot of their resources not realizing that there's another step. And so it forces the players to think in a different way. Now they have significantly more limited resources, and now they need to start thinking, can we defeat this evolution? Do we need to retreat? Going further on, do we have to worry about this? Do we want to hold back every so often if we're fighting a big boss? You know, stuff like that. I think it makes for more interesting fights. And, you know, it's the JRPG fan in me. You know, JRPG fans, like, that's where the idea of this isn't even my final form comes from, is from JRPGs. So yeah. And then finally, they introduce new campaign frames. There are 4 of them. I will go more in depth into them in the in-depth review part. But they are really, really interesting. And the unique thing about these campaign frames, the campaign frames in the core book were, you know, a few pages that just basically gave you an idea of, like, a flavor of a campaign. And they gave you maybe some, you know, mechanics that you can use in it. But for the most part, you have to do it yourself. The 4 new campaign frames have significantly more detail. They are not quite to the realm of a full campaign setting, but they're much more complex than the campaign frames in the core book, and they are freaking cool. The 4 of them are Castle High, Daggerheart of Andaluria, Reign of the Were-Dragon, and Journey to Horizon. Castle High is Hogwarts in the sky. You're at a magic high school. And it's not only is it on a flying castle, but there's also these other flying islands that the students can go and visit. And so it's this really kind of cool combination of, you know, high school drama and exploring the floating islands around you. Reign of the Were-Dragon is one of those the bad guys won things. Chris Perkins going to be doing a limited series that he GMs for it coming out this fall, if I remember correctly. So that's cool. Daggerheart of Andaluria. It's Castlevania. It's probably closer to Ravenloft than it is Castlevania, but it's, you know, that kind of it's that kind of you know, monsters are around and, you know, gothic horror type thing. There's monster hunting, and it's set in wine country. So, I mean, what else do you need? And then Journey to the Horizon is a hex crawl. And I'll go into more details during the in-depth portion of it. But there is a lot about hex crawling stuff in there that's really, really awesome that you can just use for anything, not just a Journey to the Horizon campaign. So, yeah, overall, there is just so much for GMs in here. I think this is probably a better buy for GMs than it is for players. So do I recommend this for GMs? Again, the physical version, of which, again, I have right here. Oops. There we go. I have right here. These are the cards. This is the book. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It has bookmarks. It's wonderful. It's $40 in the States. Yes, I 100% recommend it to GMs. Not just if you enjoy Daggerheart. There's a lot of stuff in here that you can use in other game systems. So if you are just, no, I am only ever going to play Pathfinder. Pathfinder is what I do. I support Paizo 100%. I will never support anyone that competes with them. Paizo is my deity. You can use a lot of the stuff that they introduce in the campaign frames section in your Pathfinder games. Like the hex crawl rules, you can use in anything. The evolution mechanic, you can use in any system. The pool mechanic, you can use in any system. You just have to understand how they work. And there's a good enough explanation in here that you can kind of template those and use them anywhere you want. So in addition to, yes, this is a good Daggerheart supplement, this is just a good GM supplement to have on your bookshelf if you want to do something different that the game doesn't really support. Like, one of the biggest criticisms of edition has been just their severe lack of exploration style support. And running a hex crawl in 5th edition is kind of a pain in the ass because you have to make up most of the rules yourself. You can use the Journey to Horizon rules in 5th edition with very little change to them and run a really cool hex crawl adventure. So, yeah, I definitely recommend this to GGGMs. Again, the $40 physical version of it is definitely worth it. Going down to $20 for the PDF is still worth it. And the Demiplane version, again, as a GM, I really like the Demiplane version. Not only because, again, the character builder in that, but if you get a subscription to Demiplane, which is like $5 a month, it's nothing. It allows you to share all the books that you own with up to, I think it's like 24 or 30 people, something like that. It's a specific number that I haven't hit yet. And I'm sharing a lot of my books with a lot of different people. So that's a really, really easy way to get people interested in playing the game, because you can give them access to the character builder and everything like that. And if you link your Demiplane with Roll20, a lot of the stuff you get on Demiplane transfers over to Roll20 for free. And if you have a Roll20 subscription, any Roll20 subscription, it automatically gives you a Demiplane subscription for free. And so, yeah, it's really, really worth it. I love it to death. Definitely good for GMs. Moving on. The third group. Should Lorehounds buy this book? So, this one is a little bit interesting. With this being a rules expansion, it is very, very much focused on literally that, expanding the rules. To kind of backtrack slightly, when I talk about TTRPG books, I tend to separate them into a number of different categories. You have your core books. These are the books you need to play the game. You have adventures or campaigns. I call them adventures, and that is an adventure that's designed to take characters from this level to this level, and it is everything you need to run this entire adventure. Then we have what are called campaign settings, which gives you all the information that you need to be able to run games in a particular campaign setting. And then we have rules expansions, which is literally that. It adds more rules to the game, new character options, new, optional rules, stuff like that. When we're talking about Lorehounds, for the most part, campaign settings tend to be geared a little bit more towards GMs, and they are gold mines for Lorehounds because they have all the lore and all the cool stuff about that campaign. Rules expansions tend to be a little bit more light, and they tend to be a little bit harder to recommend to Lorehounds because the focus is on creating new rules, new options for players and GMs to use. That being said, like every one of the new classes has a paragraph talking about the lore of that class. Every one of the ancestries has a few paragraphs talking about where it comes from. They also have not just character art, but they have like sketches and stuff of different things with descriptions, like for the Aetherists, which are angel people. They show different variations on wings and different looks for Aetherists in various points in their life, like a young Aetherist, an elder Aetherist, an adult Aetherist. And so in addition to like just artwork being everywhere and being absolutely gorgeous, there's a lot of lore in every single one of these. Like when we get to Elemental Kin, we have an entire like half page just on Elemental Kin in general, and then each one of the kin, Earthkin, Emberkin, Skykin, Tidekin, each has their own page. So there's lots of stuff. Each one of the communities has their own bit of lore, which is very, very cool and interesting. And again, more art, lots of sketch and line work that I always find really, really interesting because sometimes it looks like I can't remember the specific term. It's something. Is it something to the effect of like medical sketching, which is basically where you kind of draw out, the heart or something like that, or biological sketching, where you're literally you will draw an animal specifically so you can label the different parts for more academic purpose. And a lot of these kind of line work, pencils to sketches give me that same feeling, as if there was some historian wandering around the world of Daggerheart, and just kind of observing the various cultures and taking little sketches as they're writing down notes about their observations about these. And that feeling really kind of helps you kind of fall into the lore in and of itself. And I love that. I think it's very, very interesting and fun. It doesn't feel so much like, oh, this is half done artwork because they forgot to color it. No, it feels like biological sketches where it's some historian or some sociologist or someone that's literally, jotting things down so that they could explain it later on in a paper or something like that, or a presentation. It's really, really cool. Really, really fun. Each of the transformations is, a good, quarter of a page of lore, and then more awesome, cool stuff and artwork. When we get to the equipment tables, there's nothing there. I don't know why everywhere else in Daggerheart they put really interesting, unique descriptions, and then the weapons have nothing. Half of them don't even have artwork to be able to tell what they are. They just give a name, they give a stat for it, and that's it. And it drives me nuts because I love hearing about the lore behind weapons, specifically which cultures use these, where did they become popular. If you look at D&D, every campaign setting that introduces new weapons, like the Dark Sun campaign setting for 4th edition, they have a bunch of new weapons that are unique to Dark Sun, like the Githyanki, I think is what it's called, or Githyakudu, something like that. What it is it's a double-sided spear, effectively, or kind of like a double glaive, that's specifically used by the Thri-Kreen. And they also have this like throwing star chakram thing that they use as well. And they'll have a little spiel about how that fits into their culture. And that we never get any of that in these, and it annoys me. But anyway, going back to the other stuff, the adversaries, normally like monster manuals and stuff like that, are gold mines for Lorehounds. Each creature gets a sentence, maybe two, so it's not great. The artwork's pretty cool, but most of the monsters don't have artwork. And then we get to the campaign frames. Because the campaign frames themselves are so more robust than the others, there's tons of lore here for you guys. So lots of really, really great stuff. So going back to the idea of, do I recommend this for Lorehounds? Even at the $40 level, absolutely. There is plenty in this book for me to be able to justify $40 to get the physical version, and it comes with cards, and cards make everything better. However, if you are strapped for cash for whatever reason, the PDF is going to give you everything that you get in the physical version, and you can read it on your tablet as opposed to having to carry around a relatively lightweight book. I mean, as you can see, like, this is not a thick book, so it's not like, this is going to be weighing you down a lot. But if you are like some of the Lorehounds that I know, where you very rarely travel with just only one piece of lore to keep you entertained, having digital versions of it can be useful as well. And, a, PDF that's like less than a gig. How big is this PDF? 55,000 kilobytes. So yeah, 54 megs. Not, nothing that's going to fill up your, nothing's going to fill up your tablet anytime so soon. So definite recommend for Lorehounds. Moving on. So, quick recommendation recap. For players, definite yes. The new classes and ancestries and all that stuff is cool, but I highly recommend you look into the equipment and loot, because the new equipment that they add in here adds loads of new ways to create really interesting characters. For GMs, this is another definite yes. In addition to having the stuff that you would expect, you know, new adversaries and the new campaign for the frames, they also have stuff like an entire hex crawl system, and new features like the pool system and the evolution system that will vastly increase your ability to homebrew and make cool things like that. And then for Lorehounds, another definite yes. The character options section are a little bit dry at first, where the classes have very little lore behind them. But once you get the ancestries, communities, and transformations, you start getting a lot more lore. The adversaries are very scant on lore, but the campaign frames more than make up for it. So it's a definite yes. All of them for the physical version at $40 or whatever it sells in your country of choice. And then obviously they have PDF versions and digital versions of it that are less expensive than that. So if you are just here to figure out if you want to buy it or not, thank you very much for checking out this video. In the comments down below, what are you most interested in? Actually, you know what I'd like to know? I would like to know, are you a player? Are you a GM? Are you a Lorehound? Or do you belong to multiple groups? Let me know in the comments down below, because I would like to see what my audience is. I know I have Lorehounds in the audience. I know I have players in the audience. I know I have GMs in the audience, but I would love to see kind of the makeup. Do I have more GMs watching my stuff? Do I have more players? Do I have a lot of Lorehounds just because I seem to be the only person that acknowledges your existence? I believe in you. I believe you are real Lorehounds. Let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, I think it is time for us to start this in-depth review. So, as a reminder, this in-depth review is going to be exactly that. In depth. I am going to go chapter by chapter, sometimes page by page. I'm going to talk about the things that I like, the things that I don't like, the things I think they did well, the things I think they need to do better, and that takes a lot of time. And I know you guys have lives. Sitting down and watching a 2 or 3 hour long video is not what everybody wants to do. So I timestamp all of these things. Use the timestamps. Just go to the sections that seem the most interested to you. Use the timestamps as like bookmarks to come back and finish it later. However is most useful to you. I know YouTube would prefer me to go, no, watch the entire thing from beginning to end. Watch it 7,000 times. But I understand people have other things. People have other YouTube videos that they don't want to watch. So use the timestamps. That is what they're there for. I will not be upset if you watch this video, you know, in 7 pieces. Just because that's what you have time for. Or if you only watch the parts that seem most important to you. If you are exclusively a player and you only watch the sections on character options and equipment and loot, that's perfectly fine. That's what the timestamps are for. You don't need to, you know, learn about all the other stuff in the book if it's not that interesting to you. So, that being said, I think it's time for us to start this in-depth review. The first section, introduction. The first thing you're going to notice is the introduction. And I think, you know, I'm good with this. I generally don't show too much stuff from the book itself because I never want to like upset the people I'm doing the review of giving away stuff. They're like, well, now people aren't going to want to buy it. So I don't, that's the main reason why I don't do like, or it's one of the reasons why I don't like, you know, go page by page and have like the PDF up or anything. I don't want people to be able to use my reviews to kind of avoid buying the book or anything like this. But just to give you an idea of what you're getting into here. This is the first page of the introduction. Look at that! Big, you know, not full 2-page, but 1.5-page spread of this massively awesome looking Aethys or Aetheris or whatever they're called, the angel people. I think that's a seraph. Doing awesome stuff, fighting like werewolves and demons. Like, that is freaking awesome. And it goes through, you know, this is a Daggerheart expansion. What's the stuff in here? You have the new Dread Domain. You have the 4 new classes, the 6 ancestries and 6 communities. the new transformations, the new equipment and loot, the new adversaries, and the campaign frames. Has a little section, how should I implement these things? Mostly for GMs. And then they have an entire little paragraph specifically about the Dread domain, which is the new domain that is used by both, I believe it's the Warlock and Witch classes, both use the Dread domain. For anyone that doesn't know how Daggerheart works just in general, every class has their class features, their subclass features, and then they also have their domains. Every class, as of right now, every class has access to 2 domains, and they always share those domains with another class. So, like, both the Warlock and Witch share the Dread domain, but the Warlock has the Grace domain, whereas the there we go. I just don't have it down. Whereas the Witch has the Sage domain. So both of them have access to the Dread domain, but Witch is Sage and Dread, and Warlock is Grace and Dread. So, introducing a new domain allows for new stuff, especially if you're going to be playing around with multi-classing and stuff like that. But it's not quite the same as something like introducing a new class in like Dungeons and Dragons or Fabula Ultima, where it's all, completely brand new stuff. Every one of the classes here, the Assassin and the Brawler, are both using domains that already exist in the core book. So there are no new domain cards, which is what your abilities are in the game. The vast majority of your abilities come from your domain cards. So there are no new quote-unquote abilities for Assassins, no new things for Brawlers. Their only unique features are their class features, which still make them very cool and very unique, but it's not like if you got a new 5th edition class or something like that. So, the introduction section is literally, I don't know, 3/4 of a page, and then that awesome artwork, so that's all it is. Moving on. Chapter 1. Character options. So this is what a lot of people were most excited about. We had seen all of these in the Void. They had gone through various changes and stuff like that, and a lot of them were things that people were really, really interested in. Now that we actually have them, they are pretty cool. The 4 classes are, we have the Assassin. The Assassin, I'm going to actually open up the core book here real quick, just so. In the core book, we do have a rogue-style character, specifically called the Rogue. And they had kind of a lot of the traditional rogue abilities. They have a sneak attack ability. They have the ability to kind of hide and be stealthy and, do stuff like that. So when people heard that the Assassin was going to be there, it's like, well, don't we already have that? That we have the Rogue. Rogue, Assassin is a subclass of Rogue. It's not its own thing. So, the Assassin is different. Again, the Rogue is built around the idea of being a rogue, which, yes, they do extra damage, but they leaned a little bit more into the kind of original idea of a rogue. Fun story. I recently, I think last year, but for me that's recently, I'm 38 now. That's terrifying, by the way, that I'm almost in my 40s. And I've been doing this for over 1/4 of my life. It's nonsense. I recently got to read through the original Record of Lodoss War replay. If you're unfamiliar, the Record of Lodoss War is a replay that was basically the Acquisitions Incorporated of its time. It was something that was created by this magazine called Comptique in collaboration with the people that actually published Dungeons and Dragons in Japan. And what it was is they wanted people to start playing Dungeons and Dragons. They wanted to popularize it. And so what they did is they got a bunch of science fiction authors, gave them a starter set of Dungeons and Dragons. I think they gave them the red box. And then they said, hey, we'd like you to create your own story, your own campaign. And then what we want you to do is write down what you did, and we will serialize that in our magazine. And that is what influenced TTRPGs, which in Japan they're just called TRPGs. In Japan, replays are the reason that TRPGs over there are as popular as they are, and it's one of the biggest reasons why Call of Cthulhu is the most popular TRPG in Japan, is because the replays themselves are so popular. Well, in the original Record of Lodoss War replay, which is literally just a D&D campaign that eventually got turned into a light novel series, that eventually got turned into an anime series, which you can watch now. You can watch it on Crunchyroll. The original 13-episode anime holds up really well. It is still excellent to watch to this day. The production quality is amazing. They made a second series of it that goes on for like a couple seasons. That one is not as good. It's still pretty good, but it's not as good. The original one is amazing. The reason I'm talking about this, in the original replay, they had a character named Woodchuck who was their rogue. And again, in the original D&D, rogues were defined by their out-of-combat abilities as opposed to their combat abilities. They didn't become like backstabbers and stuff like that until later on in D&D. And so the character of Woodchuck, in the original replay, they're going through this dungeon and he scouts ahead because rogues are good at scouting and they're good at being hitting, and he runs into a bunch of giant ants. And then he books it back to the party, and really doesn't do almost anything in the combat. He just runs away, and Deedlit and Parn are the ones that actually take out the giant ants. And that's kind of what the rogue was originally envisioned as, is this out-of-combat specialist. And that's kind of what the Daggerheart rogue puts a little bit more emphasis on. Your subclass is the Nightwalker subclass, makes you kind of a more teleporty, shadowy figure, and the Syndicate's subclass just allows you to be that, political character that always knows whose purse you need to lighten or heavy, make more heavy, whatever. Knows where to put the money, always has that, oh, I know a guy kind of thing. So none of them really felt like that, I'm here to kill you. Though you could 100% make them that way using their abilities from their domain abilities. The assassin is exactly what it sounds like. Their class feature allows you to mark a character and do additional damage to them every time you hit them. Very useful. The two subclasses, you have the Executioner's Guild and the Poisoner's Guild. The Executioner's Guild, literally, it does what it says on the tin. All of their specialization features just let you do damage, and a lot of it. The Poisoner's Guild is awesome. Basically, it allows you to put poisons on your weapons that when you hit an enemy, you get to choose which poison it is. It effectively gives you on-hit effects that you can choose. They cost stress to use them, but it makes for a very, very interesting control-based character. They still do damage, but the big benefit of a poisoner assassin is just how good they are at doing different things. They can make targets vulnerable. They can make targets burn stress. They can give them disadvantage. They can even restrain them. Like, it's a really, really cool, complex class that still feels like an assassin, but it's a very different kind of assassin. So I love that. When we get to the Brawler, as I've said many, many times before, monks are the best class in every tabletop RPG. If there isn't a monk class in your tabletop RPG, you have failed as a designer, and you should add a monk class. The Brawler is a monk. They're awesome. They hit like a dump truck. They have one of their class features is I am the weapon. If you're not using any weapons, your primary weapon is called Brawler Strike. You get to use any attribute you want as the attribute that you use for that. So whatever works for you works for it. And it does a D8 and a D6 of physical damage. Both of them scale off your proficiency. So you have the strongest hitting weapon in the game at level 1. And it does other things as well. They also have this feature called Combo Strike, which allows you to burn a stress and then just keep punching. Basically, you roll your combo die, and it's weird where you have to like roll under the last thing that you rolled, and every time you roll under, you get to keep rolling again, and it's confusing, but it basically means you just go going, and you do lots of damage, and it's really, really fun. The two subclasses where things get interesting. The Juggernaut is me hit thing with fist. You know, this is your kind of standard thug. They do lots of damage, and that's what they're focused on. But the one that I love the most is the Martial Artist. Martial Artists, their specialization feature is you get stances. I have talked about this quite a few different times. I like the idea of stances for martial characters. And when I say stance, it's basically you do something to change how you interact with combat. Different TTRPGs have tried doing this in different ways. In 4th edition, they had an entire ability type called stances, where you would activate it and then it would give you something that you can do until the stance ended. And that one worked okay. Pathfinder 2nd edition has a stance system. It's not great, but I like the idea behind it. Basically, when you enter a stance, it changes your basic attack. It makes it do different things, which is cool. But in order for it to be useful, you have to take feats to give you various stances. And there are upgraded versions of each one of the stances that if you don't take that upgraded version, the stance becomes next to useless at higher levels. So just taking a stance at level 1 kind of chooses what things you have to choose at later levels. So it's not great in that aspect. The stances in Daggerheart for the martial artist are really interesting. They're all, you have this limited resource called Focus that you could only recharge on a short rest. And the way you recharge it is, there is the Focus. Here we go. Roll a number of d6s equal to your instinct on either a short or a long rest. And whatever the highest one you roll, that's how many focus you have until your next one. So it is a limited resource, but the stances themselves are very interesting. They have one that just gives you extra damage. They have another one that actually lets you regain focus, which is very, very, very useful because you use focus for everything for the martial artist. When you start getting the tier 2 and tier 3 ones, you start getting things like there's a grappling stance. There's a scary stance. The tier 4 ones, they have one called the extracting stance, which lets you count a 1 on your damage die as whatever the highest number on the damage die is. So it just increases your average damage by a lot. So yeah, they're very, very interesting. They're very unique. And they do change how you play the character. Now, not all of them are quite as much as a change as I would have liked. You know, most of them are just kind of passive changes, like here's some extra damage, or here's a bonus to your attack rolls, or something like that. So they don't massively change how you play your character, but they're varied enough that it does allow you a little bit more complexity to the character, which I love. The Warlock, as I mentioned before, Warlocks they have issues. You have a pact, So this is kind of your traditional D&D style warlock. Um, and you can actually, and this is something that I think tends to be missing a lot from most depictions of warlocks that I've seen. One of the class features is called Patron's Pack. And your patron will have a sphere of influence. Before you make an action roll, you can spend a favor, and favor is a limited resource specifically for the warlock, to call upon your patron to help you do something that is within their sphere of influence. Some examples of spheres of influence: nature, love, death, justice, whatever powerful being their sphere of influence. If you can find a way to relate it, you can ask your patron for help. But in addition to that, I thought I saw, like, if you ask them too often for help, they can get pissed off. I can't remember if that was actually a part of one of the subclasses or not, but anyway, it's a unique feature that I don't think exists with warlock archetypes anywhere near enough. Like, there was this big discussion in one of the D&D subreddits talk about the idea of warlocks that piss off their patron. And, well, see, what happens, even if a warlock, like, denounces their patron, they don't lose any of their warlock abilities, because those are permanent changes that the patron made in them. So that's permanent. They can just... And people were kind of comparing it to the idea of old school paladins. If you did something that upset your god, you lost all of your paladin levels. You would lose all of your, or at least all of your paladin abilities. Depending on which flavor of D&D you were playing, you could lose paladin levels. And that was real bad. And people's like, well, that's so stupid. I don't think they're... But when you actually, like, look at the lore of how warlocks work, at least how they worked in 5th edition, they changed everything in 5.5 and got rid of the vast majority of lore. But the original lore for warlocks was, becoming a warlock was effectively a cheat. It was a way for you to be able to cast arcane magic without either having been born with it, like being a sorcerer, or putting in the time and effort to learn the actual method of casting spells and how the magic works, like a wizard does. It was effectively, being a warlock was using ChatGPT to write your stuff for you. And so it wasn't you casting the spells. Your patron was actually interacting with the weave in order to make the spells work. And if the patron didn't want to do it anymore, then you didn't know how to do it. It wasn't like you could go, well, I point my hand in the Eldritch Blast. No, your patron was doing the hard work for you. You were just copying down what ChatGPT said. And so this idea of the patron just being this kind of passive effect that just gives you cool shit, I've never really liked that. This idea of you actually interacting with your patron and having a specific thing, favor with your patron, that you have to spend in order to get them to do things. I like that. I think that's really, really interesting. Like I said, I thought there was something in here that mentioned if you piss off your patron or something, that there are consequences for that, but I'm not seeing anything just reading through stuff. So who knows? The two subclasses, you have Pact of the Endless, Pact of the Wrathful. Pact of the Endless is kind of a control-focused subclass, and it's interesting. Again, you have things like you can impose disadvantage on enemies. You increase your damage thresholds. You can even heal yourself. So it's very much kind of a more control, almost like a leader style character. whereas the Pact of the Wrathful is a hexblade. I don't think they allow you to actually build, summon a weapon that they might. Patron's Fury, Patron's Power, or hit points. So no, you don't actually get to manifest a weapon. But like the first things you have is called Patron's Fury. Spend a favor to imbue your attacks with your patron's power until you deal severe damage or the scene ends. You basically just add extra damage until you do severe damage, which is cool. And then you have Deadly Vengeance. If you take damage, you can mark a favor and force them to take some damage. Like it's just a very aggressive, it's a hexblade. Like that's the best way I can describe it. Is you've made a hexblade, and it's really really cool. Moving on to the Witch. Again, the Witch. When I think of Witch, I think of like hags and stuff like that, and this is it. It definitely leans into the kind of fae flavor of a witch. You have ability to hex enemies. And the hex basically it lowers their difficulty, armor class effectively, and their damage rolls, so that's cool. And then I think both of the subclasses can interact with the hex in some way, shape, or form. I might be wrong. And then the subclasses, you have the Hedge Witch, which is again a little bit more of like a healer style witch, or the Moon Witch, which is very much kind of a control illusion style class. So yeah, you have a more healing style, and then you have a more controlled style. Both of them are very, very interesting. Lots of really, really cool ways to play them. And I don't know why this version of the Witch was not what I was expecting when I heard Witch. Like I was thinking something more along the lines of like Morrigan from Dragon Age, the first one. And I think she shows up in every other Dragon Age too, because she's Morrigan. But that was kind of what I was thinking of, this kind of like aggressive spellcaster. And that's not what this is, but it makes perfect sense. Like, I had this idea of what a witch is, and this wasn't it, and this makes perfect sense. And now I might consider this more when I think of witch. Anyway, it's a cool class. So yeah, those are the new classes. Moving on. Let's talk about the Ancestries. The Ancestries, again, a lot of this stuff already existed in the Void as playtests, so I don't think any of this stuff is surprising to anyone, but they are very, very cool. Again, we have the Aetheris, angel people. One of their Ancestry features allows you to change a roll with fear into a roll with hope, which is massively useful. We have the various elemental kin, which I really, really like. In D&D, wow, I can't remember what they're called now. Let's go rules, species. What are these things called? Come on. Peasant, Dragonborn, Dwarf, Elf, Gnome, Goliath, Halfling, Orc, Tiefling, Damper, Doo-doo. Really? Monster of the Multiverse. Is it here? Genasi, there we go. So in D&D, we call these Genasi. There's lots of different versions of this, but they're elemental humans. And the D&D versions always felt like they were trying to limit them. They didn't want the elemental people to become too powerful. And these versions of them feel much better as far as, like, to give you an example. Like for the Earthkin, you get a permanent +1 bonus to your armor score. Like, that's a big deal. And a lot of people go, well, no, we can't have that. It's like, no, that works perfectly. Or my personal favorite, the Emberkin. You could burn a stress. You can burn a stress to do the thing. You could burn a stress to set your primary weapon on fire until the end of the scene. And then for the rest of the scene, it gives off bright light and you do extra damage with it. Which is awesome. Like, that's what I want to do. Like, that's why I want to play an Emberkin. I want to be someone that can set my weapon on fire. That feels so cool. And you don't get to do it. Like, if you look at the Fire Genasi in Monsters of the Multiverse, the newest version of the Fire Genasi. Let's look at the actual traits that they have. Creating your character, creature lifestyle, dark resistant, dark vision, fire resistance, and then reach to the blaze. You can produce flame. You can cast Burning Hands once, and then at 5th level you can cast Flame Blade once. That's all you could do is, I can go once, and then I can go once. And that's it. And if you are a martial class and you don't have a high intelligence, wisdom, or charisma, the Flame Blade spell is really not going to be that useful for it. And at level 2, it's not that great a weapon compared to the stuff that you could do with other things. So it feels kind of lame. Whereas this one, any weapon that you want, like if you want to go full on, Simon Belmont, you can have a whip or a whip sword, set it on fire and have a flaming whip. Like, that's really, really cool. And it's just a stress to do that. That's super awesome. So yeah, I love these versions of elemental people. I think all of them have interesting, unique ancestry features that actually change how you play the character. And that's, it's one of the reasons why I loved Essence 20 so much, is because your origins actually changed how you play your character. Not just, it's a cool thing when you create your character and then you forget about it for the rest of the time you play the character. Nope. These are things that are actually useful for the entire game. And I love that. I think that's so cool. And then after the 4 elemental ones, so again, Earthkin, Emberkin, Skykin, and Tidekin, each one having cool stuff, we also finally have the Gnome, and the Gnome has the ability that I like. Flicker Step. Once per scene, you can teleport to another point you can see within far range. Can't remember. I don't think... Where are my ancestries? I don't think they had a teleporting thing in here. Dracona, Elf, Fairies. They can fly. But no, they didn't have a teleporting class in the original core book. Which, for anyone that doesn't know, in D&D 4th edition, technically not my first TTRPG I ever played was the Dragon Age RPG. Still love it. The second one that I ever played, and the one that I played the most for a long time, was D&D 4th edition. And I fell in love with the Eladrin. Eladrin was, I want to say it was in PHB 1. But it was a core class for 4th edition. And in 4th edition, every single race had a racial feature. And they were all pretty useful. The racial feature for the Eladrin was Phase Step, which it was an encounter power that allowed you to teleport. I think it was up to 5 squares. And depending on which class you chose, there were certain classes that would interact with that. Like, if I remember correctly, I can't remember if it was the Avenger or the Sword Mage. They had a thing where anytime you used your Phase Step, you could make a basic attack afterwards. And I loved it so much. It was such a great, fun feature. And so every single TTRPG that I look at, I'm always looking at, okay, where's my racial teleporting ability? And they gave it to gnomes. Don't get me wrong, gnomes are perfectly fine. It's not that I don't like gnomes. I just don't like small characters. I'm 6'4". I'm a big guy. I don't understand things from a small perspective. I have been big for so long, I don't remember what it's like to be small. But I gotta say, I'm really, really happy that they now have Flicker Step. I might... I'm definitely thinking about making a gnome character just so I can Flicker Step everywhere, because that's just fun, folks. It's just fun. So yeah. Moving on. The new communities, again, are cool. Community is probably the thing that has the least impact on your character. And it's not like it's completely useless, but compared to like racial abilities or especially the class abilities, the community abilities just or community features just aren't quite as impactful. Like one of the new communities is Duneborn, people that are born on the sand, like you're a sand dwelling society. Their community feature: during a short rest, you or an ally can re-roll a die used for a downtime move and take the higher result. Is it useful? Absolutely, but it's not game breaking or game changing or anything like that. The other new communities, Freeborn, is basically people that have overthrown a tyrannical government. Frostborn, people from the snow, basically people from Wisconsin. Hearthborn is from like an agrarian type society. Basically, if you grew up in a Miyazaki movie, you're probably Hearthborn. Reborn, meaning you grew up in one society and then you move to a different one, which is kind of cool. Then Warborn, you grew up in war. All of them interesting, unique, cool lore stuff. Yeah. Moving on. Then we get to the transformations. The transformations are, we have Demigod, Ghost, Reanimated, Shapeshifter, Vampire, and Werewolf. These are all really interesting. And as I mentioned in my recommendation section, for players, this just looks like, oh, this is a way to make my character more powerful, more interesting. And yes, if you as a GM want to treat the transformations as just another character creation option, you 100% can do that. However, the real cool part about the transformations is they allow the GM to apply mechanical consequences to big story events. So, for example, the Reanimated. You are literally Frankenstein's monster. So, you could use the Reanimated as a method of a player character dies. And they're really sad and they don't want their character to die. And the other characters don't want it as well. And so you can come up with, and this is something that I tend to recommend for any TTRPG, just because a player died doesn't mean they have to roll a new character. If everybody's really invested in this character, then create a quest line where they have to do something to find something that allows you to resurrect them. If your particular TTRPG does not have a resurrection mechanic, congratulations. That means that you can make this a very difficult, very harrowing quest because they're doing something that shouldn't be possible in your world. It doesn't mean that you can't do it. With the Reanimated transformation, player dies, or player character dies. If the player dies, we have other things we have to deal with. But if a player character dies, they don't want to give up on their character, you can allow the other players to go on a quest to find a way to bring them back. And there's effectively two different ways. You have the Ghost and you have the Reanimated. They both play very, very differently. And depending on what choices the players make in trying to resurrect their friend, they can go kind of either way, and it allows the character to come back, but in a very different state. First of all, a reanimated character is going to turn some heads and things like that. versus a ghost, which is also going to turn heads. But it allows them to continue playing the character with actual consequences that will change how they play their character, which I find really, really fascinating. Shapeshifter is another one that's really, really interesting that can create some interesting characters. And again, you might think that Shapeshifter needs to be something that is part of your character at character creation, but it just as easily could be like if you're playing a warlock and you piss off your patron, the patron might curse you with the shapeshifter ancestry as a way to cause some mischief and stuff like that. And the additional aspect of it is, well, yes, as a shapeshifter, you can change shapes, but because it's a punishment, every so often your patron will change your shape for you at inopportune times and things like that. So you can see there's so many aspects of this that give the GM so many more tools that you can use to create interesting, unique stories. Then we come to the two most talked about ones because everybody loves them: vampires and werewolves. Both the transformations are cool. And again, both of them can be results of choices that the players have made. If you have them fighting vampires and one of them gets bit by a vampire, you can use the vampire transformation as a method of not really a punishment, but a consequence of what happened. And now the player has to deal with feeding. And there are some benefits to being a vampire, but there are also downsides. And the whole team is going to have to deal with that aspect of it. Same thing is true about the werewolf. You get very, very powerful as a werewolf, but there's also a chance that you're going to kill your allies. So, again, you're fighting lycanthropes. Having the very real possibility of being turned into a werewolf is really interesting and makes lycanthropes and vampires significantly scarier. As scary as they should be, according to, the lore. The idea that, getting bit by a vampire can theoretically turn you into a vampire should be something scary. Or, lycanthropy is effectively treated as a disease, a very communicable, very spreadable disease. And in most TTRPGs, it's a minor inconvenience at best. And in this, it can actually completely change how your character plays. And I think that's really, really cool and interesting. So, yeah. Moving on. Chapter 2. Equipment and Loot. This was the first thing that really surprised me about this book. They introduce new primary and new secondary weapons of every tier. The new primary weapons, some of the things you would expect. Things like they have a katana, which is really not that different. Some people have kind of complained because a katana is technically like a better version of, I think it's a longsword that uses a slightly different trait. And that's one of the biggest problems I have with Daggerheart is because they provide no lore, no description, no nothing of any of their equipment. The name of the equipment doesn't matter. You can call it a katana. You could call it a hit-me-bat. It doesn't matter. There's nothing in this description that makes it feel more like a katana or less like a katana. Same thing is true about the brass knuckles. They're a strength-based melee weapon that's one-handed, does a DA plus 1 physical damage. Whoop-de-doo. So you could put as little or as much emphasis on, how cool they are that you want, but some of the more interesting things that they added the whip sword. I mentioned that in my recommendation section. It's literally a whip that can turn into a sword, and I love that. I think it's great because they do have a whip in the core book, but it's a secondary weapon, and there are certain things that need to interact with the primary weapon. So if you do want to build that kind of whip wielding character, whip sword is the way to go about it, and it's super cool. As far as magic weapons, they did add in things like they have an enchanted chakram, they have a casting dagger, a rune lock pistol, which I love, It's basically just they had pistols for the Colossus campaign frame from the core book. They had guns and stuff like that. The Runelock pistol is just a magic version of it. And that's all it does. It's very, very similar to the regular revolver. It's just, it does magic damage instead of physical damage. Then they also have an arcane rifle. When you start getting in the tier 2 stuff, they start adding in some interesting things as far as primary weapons. A cane sword, a bladed fan, displacement razor, a fury gem, an enchanted lute. And then when you start getting into tier 3s, you have things like a change scythe, rocket maul. They have a gun blade. I love that a lot. But this is not the gun blade that I'm used to where you pull the trigger and it explodes. It has a gun and it also has a sword. So you can shoot with it and then you can slice with it. It's still kind of cool. And then when you get to the tier 4 stuff, there are some pretty interesting things. Like there's a Storm God's Great Axe, Gravity Arbalest, Clockwork Crossbow. So interesting, unique weapons. Then we get to the secondary weapons. Another one, really, really cool, Fighting Cloak. So effectively, for anyone who doesn't know, when fencing was really, really big, there's a number of different styles of fencing. Your kind of traditional fencing was just single rapier. And that was basically where you started when you were learning fencing. But as soon as you got comfortable with that, there were all of these additional styles of fencing that added various benefits. One of my favorite ones to point out is called the Florentine style. The reason it's called the Florentine style, it was very popular in Florence, Italy. And in that style of fencing, you use a pair of rapiers. Both of them the same size rapier, not like small rapier and big rapier. It's the same sword. And it was incredibly useful, but very complex to learn. Some of the more common ones, pairing a rapier with a buckler, rapier and dagger. But one of my favorite ones is called rapier and cape. And this one, what you would do is you would wear a cape. And what you would do is you would twist the cape, or you would hold the cape in your offhand, and you would use it to effectively as a shield. Because despite the fact that it was just cloth, the kind of whipping motion and stuff like that, kind of wrapping it around your hand and other things like that, would allow you to do things like, first of all, you could block the line of sight of your enemy so they couldn't see you and kind of maneuver around it. You could use it to trap their weapon. You could wrap it around your hand and use it to literally grab their rapier or their dagger. You could hit them with it to try and entangle them. Like, it was a really, really interesting fighting style. So effectively, this fighting cloak kind of leans into that idea of fighting with a cape, and I think that's really, really cool. Yeah, and then when we start getting to other things, they have the segmented staff, which is 100% wrong, because what it is, they have a picture of it. It's a 3-section staff. If you're not familiar with this weapon, a 3-section staff is a kung fu weapon, and it is literally that. It is 3 bars that are generally connected by a single chain link or a couple chain links, so that there's not a lot of give between the 3 sections. It's a flexible weapon, so it's another weapon that is exceptionally good at giving you bruises in places you didn't know you could get bruises in. But the way that you use it is so incredibly varied, because you can use it by like holding one end and swinging it around like a flail. You can also grab the center of it and kind of use the ends as like nunchuck style attacks, or you can grab the 2 outside and use them as kind of like paired sticks, like kali sticks, while still having the center part to be able to guard your center section. So it is a 2-handed weapon. I have no idea why they have it here as a 1-handed secondary weapon. You cannot use a 3-section staff as a one. I mean, you technically can. Like, one of the ways you can use it is you hold it in one hand and then you throw it forward, and you basically use it like a dart and then pull it back and collect it again. And it's very effective like that. You can also use nunchucks like that too. Like, one of the a very, very effective strike with a nunchuck is you trap the nunchuck underneath your armpit, and then you fling it forward. And so when it comes out like a bullet and just goes pow. And so you kind of knock it like that, and then you can retrap it, or you can knock it and switch around and bend it around. Like, it's one of the cool things about using nunchucks. I practiced with nunchucks for a couple of years. I was never very good, but I did learn a little bit. Yeah, they also have another just massively cool thing that, again, does have some historical reference. They have a thing called an Eldritch Vambrace. And its special feature is when you're attacked, you can mark an armor slot to gain a bonus to your evasion equal to your armor score against the attack. So effectively, it is an armored, like, full-on, like, gauntlet and goes partway up your arm that you can use to kind of block. And that is a thing that happened. Like, it was one of the reasons why you would wear, like, bracers and stuff like that, or you could even have, like, bucklers that were literally attached to your armor and stuff like that. You could block with your armor or use it to trap an enemy. One of the things a lot of people don't realize when medieval fighting, when you were, wearing gloves and stuff like that, like gauntlets or, padded gloves or things like that, one of the things you could do was literally just grab your opponent's weapon and try to yank it out of their hand, or just grab it so that they couldn't cut you with it. And when you were wearing, like, chainmail, gloves, or even just padded gloves, you really weren't in that much danger of having your hand cut. Like, even if it was just kind of like thick padded cloth, it could generally create enough friction that they wouldn't be able to cut too much, and it would kind of jam up the blade. It was a little bit better if you were wearing a gauntlet or chainmail gloves, because then there's no way you're getting cut by that. Like, chainmail was designed to defend against slicing. But yeah, so, this Eldritch Vambrace, it just, to me, it just sounds like such a cool character idea where you have, like, you have your longsword, or what are one of the really cool one-handed weapons that they had in there? You have your whip sword. So you have your whip sword, and then when people get close, you have your Eldritch Vambrace, where you just go shing, and, like, it's just cool as hell. So anyway, so I thought that was cool. Trying to see if there's other kind of cool. They had one that's called a Void Needle. Which is really weird, or an Echo Blade. Basically allows you to hit a second target because it echoes. So things like that, really cool. They introduced some new armor. All of it is interesting and unique. And then they introduced a bunch of new items, things like caltrops. What was it? Collapsible pole, 10-foot pole. Cheater's coin. When you flip this coin, you can spend a hope to determine which side it lands on. Very, very useful. A force disc. This shimmering two-dimensional disc of magical force has a 4-foot diameter and is magically tethered to a pebble. The disc always floats 3 feet north of and at the same elevation as the pebble. The pebble has a mass equal to 1/100th of the total mass carried by the disc. So, Tensor's floating disc, effectively. So cool stuff like that. There's a bunch of new things, a bunch of new consumables. The pipeweed, red ooze oil. You can coat your weapon in it, and it does extra damage and ignites things. So, stuff like that. Lots of cool stuff that just makes the game that much more interesting. Moving on. Chapter 3. Adversaries and Environments. So, as I mentioned in my Should You Buy This section, These adversaries are just flat out better than the adversaries in the core book. It's not to say that the core book adversaries are bad. However, they have had over a year, to be able to learn from how players are playing, from their own playing. They've just learned to design monsters better, and these monsters are just a little bit more fun to run. Again, not saying that the other ones aren't fun to run. These ones are just cooler. They also introduced 2 new features. They have the pool feature. I explained it a little bit in my section, my Should You Buy It section. Effectively what it is you will have certain creatures that when they do something, they can add a point to a pool that other related creatures can then spend those points to do something. The example I gave in the Should You Buy It section was for the Guahalan Fanglord, where every time they make a successful attack, they put a point into their pool, and then any other Guahalan monsters can burn one of those points to get advantage on their attack roll. So a very kind of interesting, unique mechanic that can be used to create even more synergy between monsters and stuff like that. Then the other thing they have is evolution, which is basically, this isn't even my final form. And again, I love stuff like that. I think it adds extra kind of danger and stress to already kind of unique and kick counters, and can make the players really, really feel that they have to be on their best foot in order to be able to win. Yeah, when we start looking at the adversaries themselves, one of the things that I did notice is fairly often we will find a monster in here that seems somewhat familiar, and as you look into it more, you're like, oh, like, really good example. One of the tier 2 monsters is called a Doppelhound, and it's a wolf-like creature that has 2 tentacles. Boy, that sounds familiar. One of the features is when it gets into combat, it creates an illusory duplicate of itself that the players will have a hard time telling which one is real and which one isn't. I wonder, gosh, that sounds really familiar. A bestial creature that has 2 tentacles with teeth on them, that produces an illusory copy of Displacer Beast. It's 100% a Displacer Beast. And we see this a couple different times in here. And I'm not upset. Like, they're good monsters in D&D. To be perfectly honest, I prefer the Doppelhound over the Displacer Beast. Mostly because the players literally can't tell the difference between the duplicate and the regular one. Whereas anyone that's played D&D before knows, for a Displacer Beast, the copy doesn't have a shadow. So you just look for the shadow and hit the one that doesn't have a shadow, and so they become mostly useless after the first time your players deal with Displacer Beasts, because they're not that difficult to kill. But the thing that makes them difficult is you can hit the wrong one, and they can just switch places with their displaced copy. But as soon as you can tell, oh, it's just the one without the shadow, this doesn't have that. This doesn't have that ability, and so it makes them actually a threat to the players, and I like that. Some of the other ones, they have a creature called a Gobstalker, which has a bunch of tentacles that fire rays. I wonder what that is supposed to be. Let me see if there's any other ones that kind of jumped out at me. They have a Rust Eater and a Land Shark. Yeah, they also have some dinosaurs in here. They have a Triceratops. They have a T-Rex. I always like that. When we start getting into the tier 3 stuff, they start adding some cool stuff. Like they have a Chimera, which is a classic just monster in general. The Chimera in D&D, I don't think is done particularly well. Like, it doesn't feel very dangerous. This Chimera is cool. It's got a lion's head, a goat's body and a serpent's tail. It has both a lion's head and a goat's head, and then the serpent tail, and then they can do all these other cool stuff. It really feels like a chimera. If you've ever played Dragon's Dogma or Dragon's Dogma 2, they have chimera monsters that you have to fight. They're really fun to fight. So yeah, this gives more of that feeling. There was another one that I thought was interesting. Plesiosaurus is another one they have there. They have a sandworm, kind of cool thing there. They have a vampire lord, which is really, really cool, and that one has an evolution mechanic, which is awesome. And they have a young fire dragon. So that's another one. That's a tier 3 adversary. Make dragons terrifying. Then when you get to tier 4, they have all these creatures that are called cephalith. They have a cephalith abomination, cephalith noviate, cephalith priest, and then the biggest of all of them is a cephalith titan. And I'm just going to read the description. A trans-dimensional entity in the form of an impossibly large winged humanoid with an octopus-shaped head and rows of glowing eyes. They added Cthulhu. That's what it is. It's Cthulhu. You can fight Cthulhu in Daggerheart, and he's rough. Yeah, he's a tough fight. Not quite as hard as Cthulhu should be in the kind of traditional sense of Cthulhu, but still is rough. So I thought that was really, really cool. Then other things, they have a Fire Titan Warlord, fire giants, and Demon Lord Burzug. That's Demogorgon. 100% that's the Demogorgon. They have they have the 4 horsemen: the Harbinger of Death, Harbinger of Famine, Harbinger of Pestilence, Harbinger of War. I love the 4 horsemen in general as an idea, and having all of them in here is really, really cool. Makes for a very interesting combat and kick a counter when you have to deal with all 3 or all 4 of them. They have a creature called the Supreme Demiurge Adonix, which is a biblically accurate angel. If you're not sure what that means, I would say, type that into Google image search, but you don't want to do that because they're terrifying. When you actually look at how angels are described in the Bible, they're not, these very pretty humans with little wings. No, they're creatures that have far too many eyes and are geometric shapes that don't make sense. Like, they are terrifying things. And so, yeah, that's what a Supreme Demiurge Adonix is. So, yeah. Then we get into the environments. And again, when I ran my Daggerheart game, which was just me doing the Village of Hamlet, a classic D&D adventure that I just turned into Daggerheart, I did not use any environments, and I regret that, because they basically act as an additional challenge to combat, and they're really, really interesting. And some of the really cool environments they have Abandoned Mine, Corrupted Swamp, Cursed Graveyard. They even have one called Hold the Line. The party must fend off multiple waves of enemies long enough for an ally to complete an important objective. That is an environment, and that adds to something that I say all the time when I'm talking about especially high-level encounter design, combat encounter design, is in any TTRPG, once you start getting into high-level stuff, you cannot create your encounters where the win condition is the bad guys die and the lose condition is the good guys die. Because in most TTRPGs, once you're getting to high-level stuff, there isn't going to be a way that you can challenge them with just that. You have to have additional win and lose conditions. And Hold the Line is a brilliant version of an alternate win or lose condition. So yeah, when we start getting into the tier 2 stuff, they have things like a tier 2 social environment is called Beach Day, or Masquerade Ball. It's another thing that's really cool, is these environments don't have to be combat environments. They can be social environments. Or Heist is a tier 2 event environment, which I really, really love. Or Ocean Voyage is a tier 2 traversal environment to kind of play out them crossing a large body of water. We get to the tier 3 ones. You have things like the Astral Realm, Sunken Citadel, a Megastorm, a Dragon's Lair, a Volcanic Eruption. Then the tier 4 environments, Moon Kingdom, Time Court, the Realm of the Dead. Really cool, interesting stuff. Moving on. Chapter 4. Campaign Frames. Now, we've dealt with campaign frames before. In the core book, they had like 6, I want to say, campaign frames. And that is exactly what they were. They gave you an idea of a campaign, and they gave you some stuff to populate the campaign with, but they were very, very bare bones, which for people like me, who likes to design their own stuff and doesn't really want to be totally adherent to something someone else has made, campaign frames work really, really well. However, a lot of players want something more. So the campaign frames that they have in here are significantly more detailed. Your average campaign frame in the core book, let's go with, like, because I have the core book right here. Let's go with the Witherwild. First campaign frame, you have an overview page. You have a couple pages that talk about how communities work in it, ancestries work in it, classes work in it. Literally 2 pages. You have the various principles and distinctions for it. So another 2 page. We're up to 5 pages now. And then 2 pages of lore and campaign mechanics. And that's it. So a grand total of, what was it, 7 pages for the entire campaign frame. When we go to Castle High, the first least complex of the campaign frames, we have the overview page. We have the communities and player principles, around 3 pages. We have the GM principles, 4 pages. The distinctions, things that make it unique. It talks about the campus and the school and all that other stuff. We have another page that's talking more about that. Things about missing kids, a little adventure hook for the players, and a bunch of different tables you can roll on to generate different kids that might have gone missing. We have things about mounts, the different brooms or other things that you fly around with, the Skylands, the other islands that they're around there, different artifacts, points of interest, sky shards, the flying system, an inciting incident for it, specific campaign mechanics like how to fly and how to run a less lethal campaign. And overall, it ends on page 127 and it starts on page 116. So Castle High, the least complex of the new campaign frames, is 11 pages long. And as you go through more of the campaign frames, they just get more and more amazing. Castle High, again, is going to be that kind of high school vibe. It's Hogwarts. Whereas when we go to Reign of the Were-Dragon, this is kind of Sleeping Beauty if Maleficent won. If you look at the artwork on the first page, it is 100% Sleeping Beauty. Like, there's this dragon that looks very much like Maleficent in her dragon form. She's purple and terrifying. And then it has this kind of green, craggy area that they're fighting on with like spiky vines going around. Like, it looks like it was taken out of concept art for like a redone Sleeping Beauty. And then it has the player characters on there as well. And it's really cool. This is the campaign frame that Chris Perkins is going to be doing their live play of, I think in the fall here, which I'm really, really excited about. I like watching the Daggerheart live plays. I loved Age of Umbra. I think I only got to watch half of like the 7th episode, and I haven't watched the finale of Age of Umbra yet. I'm planning on doing that. So I'll definitely be watching that. But very kind of fairy tale-esque. And again, has tons and tons of stuff to help you build out an entire adventure. They have stuff that feels at home in like Wizard of Oz. Like they have a Clank that looks like the Tin Man, and a Cowardly Lion looking character, and again they have a curse mechanic for it, and the dragon itself, and all these really cool things. Then we get to Daggerheart of Andalura, which for this one, I'm just going to read you the pitch because it's so good. Andaluria is a land of sweeping vineyards where beauty and dread intertwine. By day, the streets and valleys are alive with festivals, music, and the scent of wine. But when the sun sets, monsters come out to feast. For generations, the old superstitions and folk rites kept the beasts at bay, but of late the nights have grown unnaturally long, and the citizens of Andaluria live in fear of increasingly terrifying monsters. In a Daggerheart of Andaluria campaign, you'll play monster hunters who must investigate horrific crimes, navigate political strife, and slay supernatural creatures to protect the people from eternal darkness. Does that not sound amazing? You know, monsters have always been a problem, but we had all of these rights and things like that to keep them back. Something is causing the monsters to come more aggressive, to show up more often. Like, it's such a cool idea. Yeah, it's got that kind of survival horror-esque feeling to it. It has some new weapons like holy shotguns and chained whip, which is a secondary weapon. They don't have my chained whip as a primary weapon, but whatever. They also have a repeating crossbow as one of the weapons in there. They have specific stuff about the transformations and how they kind of work in this setting, because 100% you're going to be dealing with werewolves, vampires, and stuff like that. So yeah, lots of cool stuff. They have an entire section about the hunt and how to make hunting monsters feel more engaging than just, we walk around, ooh, look, there's a monster. Like actual hunting them and things like that, and how to make monsters that are worth hunting, stuff like that. Really enjoy things like that. And then finally, we get to Journey to Horizon, which is my favorite campaign frame. Not so much that I think the campaign frame itself is that amazing. It's a cool idea. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. But the basic idea of it is there is this world-ending cataclysm that's about to happen. And so this goddess, in an attempt to save the world, takes these major cities and puts them in bubbles for, I believe it's 1,000 years. Well, the 1,000 years is over. And so now adventurers need, because they've been stuck in this bubble for 1,000 years, resources are finally starting to become a little bit troubled, and the bubble's not there. So your job is to explore the world and eventually make it to the horizon to try and reawaken the goddess that protected everyone before. And so while that in and of itself is kind of cool, the thing that makes this so amazing is this is a hex crawl. If you're not familiar with that term, a hex crawl is a style of adventure, and the reason it's called a hex crawl is when you were first doing it, what you would do is you would have a world map that was split up, and you would put a hex grid on it. So instead of having squares as your grid, you would have hexagons as your grid. And the reason that hex grids work better than squares is you don't have to worry about diagonal movement and Pythagorean theorem and all that stuff. Hex grids, you could move in any of 6 directions. So any direction from a hex is going to bring you directly into a hex. You're not going to be going over a corner or something like that. So it just works better. And so the thing about a hex crawl that makes it so interesting, and I made an entire video talking about hex crawls. The thing that makes a hex crawl so interesting is the entire point of it is you have this entire unmarked map in front of you. And every time you go into a new hex, you discover something new. You discover something unique, and you literally build the map as you explore. Well, starting on page 169, on the campaign mechanics section, you have the hex crawl. And then for the next, I think it's 10 pages, it teaches you how to run a hex crawl. It gives you a bunch of different symbols you can use on your hex crawl to kind of mark different kind of terrains and different kind of encounters and things like that. It's really amazing. They have a bunch of different tables you can roll on to generate random events in each of the hexes. They have rumor tables that you can roll on, and sanctuary tables, and settlement name tables, and all of the, like, it's just this really beautiful, impressively extensive guide to how to run a hex crawl. And I've never seen another I've never seen another TTRPG spend this much time teaching players how to run a hex crawl. There are resources out there that can teach you how to run a hex crawl. They've never been included in a core book ever. There might be a section in the DMG that talks about hex crawls, but nothing like this. Nothing that explains literally every single thing you need to know to be able to run a hex crawl. It's amazing. It absolutely blows my mind. And then at the very end of it, they have a full gameplay example just to kind of show you, okay, this is how an actual hex crawl would feel. This is what it looks like when you're actually running it. And it's absolutely amazing. I love everything about it. So yeah, that in and of itself is almost worth the purchase of the book. So moving on. I have gone through an entire bottle of water doing this review. Shows you how much I work. All right, so the next chapter, Appendix. It shows all, makes a reference of all the different domain cards, all the different equipment, the new martial arts standis. They have a villain builder for Reign of the Were-Dragon, Journey to the Horizon, a bunch of trackers and stuff like that. And then the various maps. They have a Castle High map. They have a Reign of the Were-Dragon map. They have a Dark Heart of Andaluria map. And then they have a Journey to Horizon double map. It's two 8.5 by 11 sheets that have some settlements in it. But the thing that's really nice is it already has the hex grid printed on it. So you literally could just print this out and start using it. And I don't think they have it up yet because technically, as of recording this video, the game hasn't launched. By the time I upload this, I'm thinking it's going to go live on the 24th. It'll be launching the next day. So by the time you're watching this, when you buy it, you can probably go. But they have, for additional versions of this map, visit daggerheart.com/downloads. They will have multiple Journey to Horizon maps in case you wanted to run a second campaign. You know, your players had already played Journey to the Horizon once, you wanted to do it again, and you wanted a different map to explore this time. The fact that you will be kind of building, you theoretically can build the map as you do it, as your players explore it, or you can, build it ahead of time and just kind of reveal it as they go. Both of those work for a hex crawl. So technically you can use the same map and have a completely different experience, but having multiple maps for your Journey to Horizon adventure is very, very cool. And then we get to the index, and that's everything. And at the very end, it has actual pictures of all the cards. And again, the artwork's gorgeous, as it always is. So, yeah, moving on. Two final thoughts. Guys, I will say it again. I was 100% surprised by this book. I'd been following the Void stuff, the playtest material for this. I was very familiar with the classes. I hadn't looked into the Warlock and the Witch because they didn't really intrigue me that much, but I'd looked into the Assassin, I'd looked into the Brawler. I thought both of them were very interesting. I'd looked into the Ancestries. I thought they were cool, the communities, the transformations. And so that's what I was expecting. I was expecting some new character options, and then, you know, some new monsters, and then the exact same kind of campaign frames that we got in the core book. And boy, did this blow me out of the water. The equipment section in and of itself, I was not expecting them to add new weapons, nor was I expecting to be so interested in a lot of the weapons. The new adversaries, again, it wasn't like the core book adversaries were bad. I enjoyed running the core book adversaries, but these are so much more interesting, so much more unique, so much more fun to run. And then the campaign frames just blew me away. Specifically, again, I will talk about Journey to Horizon until I am blue in the face. It is so impressive to me just how well a guide they put into Journey to Horizon for running a hex crawl adventure. I think hex crawl adventures are very, very cool, but they're not something that is easy to run. And again, I have never seen a core book ever that has had anything other than a mild kind of reference to, by the way, if you want to run a hex crawl, here's some tables or something. But they've never actually taught you how to run a hex crawl. And hex crawls are really, really enjoyable styles of campaigns for players that are into that kind of exploration aspect. Rangers work super, super well in hex crawl adventures, because so much of a hex crawl is going out into unexplored lands and, you know, having to worry about, do we have enough food? You know, are we going to go into a place that's going to prevent us from getting back? Like, there's so many cool things that can happen in a hex crawl that just can't happen in a more kind of traditional modern D&D adventure. And yeah, like, the advice that they have in there is really, really good. Probably the only kind of limitation to it that I saw was again, they have a lot of different ways to generate things, but I don't think there's quite enough kind of random tables in here to really allow you to completely run a kind of generated as you go hex crawl. There's a lot here, but you probably want a couple extra like encounter tables and stuff like that to really be able to run a hex crawl adventure well. Oh wait, I am going to correct myself. The One Ring Second Edition does have some okay hex crawl stuff in their journey section, whatever it's called. So I'm wrong. The One Ring Second Edition does have hex crawl rules in them. I like these ones better, to be blunt, because the One Ring Second Edition expects you to be using pre-made maps, where this one kind of teaches you how to make your own maps. So yeah. So overall, like I said, I really, really love this book. I could not be more happy with the stuff that I got in it. I think the new character classes are interesting and unique. The new monsters are awesome. The new equipment and loot is amazing. And I want to run a Journey to Horizon adventure. I think it would be massively, massively fun. And I strongly encourage, even if you're a new GM, there's enough here that you could run Journey to Horizon. It would be a learning experience, and you would make a lot of mistakes. But guess what? That's the best way to learn. And as long as your players are willing to deal with mistakes and things going wrong, they would probably have a blast playing a hex crawl using Daggerheart. I think Daggerheart works really, really well as a hex crawl in general. So, yeah, just everything about it is cool. So, anyway, that's going to be all for me today. As always, please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon to turn notifications on. All those things are super, super important. In the comments down below, now that you've heard everything, what is the thing that is most interesting to you about this book? Are you a big character options person? Do you like the new classes or the ancestors or whatever? Are you really into the campaign frames? Did the new equipment and loot really get you interested, or are you just really looking forward to playing around with some of those environments? This is stat blocks, especially some of the like social environments or travel environments, just for unique situations to go through in the game. Let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, again, that is all for me today. I will see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.